Before we introduce Mustapha, our presenter today, just to give you a little background on GEO LDN, because I realize we all take part in so many different seminars, webinars, and just to give you a brief reminder of where you have landed today. GEO LDN is serving the UNCCD party. So the beauty of our approach, I would say, is that we are mandated or invited by the UNCCD, the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, to help them to implement the convention. And that happened during the 13th Conference of the Parties. I think that was in 2017 in Ordos in China, where the UNCCD asked GEO specifically, please support us in the implementation of the convention. And GEO, the Group on Earth Observations, which is an intergovernmental partnership of more than 120 governments, established the GEO LDN initiative, as it was that time, so the GEO Land Degradation Neutrality Initiative, to do exactly that, to support the UNCCD. So that's our main stakeholder, you could even say our commissioning party almost. And how is that support rendered? As one part through 3 working groups, one on capacity building to also strengthen capturing national data, the second one on data quality standards, so that to ensure that data can talk to each other, interoperability as a technical term, and the third one is about access and processing of the data sets, or data analytics working group. And this initial mandate of the UNCCD was reinforced at following Conference of the Parties through, I think, altogether 6 additional COP decisions to ask GEO or GEO LDN specifically for certain areas or aspects of supporting the implementation of the convention, for instance, to also consider land governance in connection with land degradation. Next slide, please. So the GEO LDN Secretariat is hosted at GIZ at the moment, as I said already, for the next almost bit more than 3 years until October 2026, and we'll look for sustainable options to continue a GEO LDN Secretariat wherever that may be. The way we want to create impact is can be divided into 4 aspects or 4 areas. The first one is we want to connect communities at a global level between countries, but also at the national level and below that, to bring together the relevant actors who deal with Earth observation, with environment and the monitoring of the environment, and with spatial planning as a vehicle to improve spatial decision making. In order to do that, we have set up a process, this puzzle on the right-hand side, it's designed as a continuous learning process, as a peer-to-peer exchange, and these monthly seminars, one of which you attend today, is only one part of it. As you can see, there's also an annual in-person exchange, which we call the Yearly Dialogue Forum. There's a LinkedIn group, several other processes just to build the necessary capacities, competences in our network to use spatial planning and Earth observation data to reach towards land degradation neutrality. The third one, next slide, please, is that we build what we call the LDN toolbox. And the main idea is to bring data and the people who use the data together. So we have established this toolbox of methods and tools and policies and interoperable standards, so that users who need Earth observation data can access them in an easier way for their decision making. And all that, one more aspect, Lena, sorry, one back please. Yeah, all that to reach to achieve multilateral environmental development goals like the SDGs, and As you may know, land is the common denominator among many of those sustainable development goals. Thank you. Next one. Yeah, just a very brief look at our partner network. So you see the network of GEO LDN spans around the globe. There are non-governmental organizations like Conservation International in the US. There is, of course, the GEO Secretariat in Geneva in Switzerland. There are several partners on the African continent. I think soon we should also add the OSS logo to this map. There's the University of Energy and Natural Resources in Ghana, for instance, the Regional Center for Mapping in Nairobi, the Global Partnership, also based in Nairobi. A very active member is also comes from CSIRO, an organization, a government organization in Australia. So many of these are volunteers, scientists, and policymakers around the world who, a part of their day job, have this burning issue of reaching or helping others to reach land degradation neutrality. And so far about a brief overview. If there are questions, we can cover it after the presentation in the discussion. Yeah, just as a brief reminder, as I said already, the webinars, they are recorded and published on our website. You see the URL on the top right, so easy to find on our website. If you have missed any of the previous ones, please just browse there and have a look of what is interesting for you. And with those few remarks, yeah, we have the agenda for today. I briefly mentioned the topic already, so after Mustapha's presentation, we'll have time for a Q&A session, around 15 minutes before we conclude this webinar. Let me introduce the speaker for today. We're very happy to have you here, Mustapha Mimouni. He's the head of remote sensing and the GIS unit at the Sahara and Sahel Observatory, OSS. He has a long experience in using Earth observations and GIS from the Algerian Space Agency and OSS itself. He's a computer science engineer, holding also a PG diploma in photogrammetry and a master's degree in geoinformation science. Thank you very much again, Mustapha, for being here with us today. And we are very excited to hear what you have to tell us about the MISLAND platform. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the nice presentation and for inviting me to and for giving me the opportunity to share what we have done. It's a short story about what we have done in land degradation monitoring and assessment, and with a focus on MISLAND Africa. So my name is Mustapha Mimouni. I will go through the short overview of OSS experience first in land degradation monitoring and then to MISLAND Africa. Next slide, please. So for those who don't know OSS, we are an international organization with an African vocation. We have been, let's say, created in 1992 and in Paris, in France, and then moved to Tunis since 2000. We are counting 26 African member countries in the 4 regions, North, East, West, and Central Africa. And also we have 7 non-African member countries, and we have also sub-regional, international and civil society organization working with us. So mainly we have our main mandate is to support member countries in the implementation of their sustainable development policies and projects. So we have a scientific and technical program which is structured around 4 pillars. The first one is the water, which is mainly contribution to meeting water needs through integrated management tool. And the second one is the land, which is where we are targeting the sustainable land management and mitigation of the effects of drought. The third one is the biodiversity, and the fourth one is the climate. And as you see, the four technical and scientific components are, let's say, interlinked with cross-cutting programs. We have the watch and prospective program. We have the communication and information, and we have the capacity building. And around that, we have transversal, let's say, activities, mainly IT and remote sensing and GIS. Next slide, please. So First of all, let's say something like 20 years ago, and even before joining the OSS, my colleagues were working on mainly on the national environmental monitoring system at the for environmental monitoring at the level of the observatories. What does it mean? They have some specific places with very known, let's say, very specific ecosystem, and they try to raise awareness on the long-term monitoring, but also defining some guides and some guidelines. And then from the NSO, they moved to Rosette project, which is where they discuss about development of harmonized kit of indicators. I'm talking about harmonized because it's not the same definition of what we are doing in Niger, in Morocco, in Tunisia, and in Benin, for example. And then also to start doing the in-situ monitoring. The in-situ monitoring at the level of the observatories, it continues through the REPSILE project. Through the sites labeling, it means defining the limitations of sites, but also through the Earth observation integration. When we started the first, let's say, assessment of what can Earth observation provide as added value, and then through the MENADAT and BRICS project, where they try to develop some kit of indicators, but also thematic studies on different ecosystems, how they evolve over the time, but also the monitoring evaluation and how to develop the first decision support systems. And then comes the GMS and Africa, where we thought about what are the main relevant, let's say, indicators to address the land degradation in North Africa. And based on the capitalization of existing, we developed decision support system, which was in the first phase limited to the North Africa region, and then extended to we are working towards its extension for the whole Africa continent. So we had mainly the first step, or the first component, was surveillance. We try to understand the changes, and then the early warning to prevent and anticipate what is beyond, and then monitoring and evaluation through the development of harmonized, let's say, key components for guiding the decision making. Next slide, please. So for monitoring observatories, we try to get some very, let's say, representative places in the Northeast and the West Africa. We try to engage the national environmental monitoring through institutional engagement, and then we try to understand we have a common understanding of what is there and what could be done. And then through with the national partners, we define some roadmap and action plan, because strategies need to be concretized on the ground. So as an output, the first output was a harmonized kit of indicators for monitoring. We tried also to make the good practices for measurements and data collection, which has been, let's say, undertaken by the national partners for long years. And then we moved to the data processing and thematic mapping to describe the state of the ecosystem and its evolution over time. And of course, what we produce, we need to be disseminated and adapted to different audiences through bulletins for large public, but also through atlases and geoportals. So for the local scale, we were using mainly field visits. We were undertaking regular field visits thanks to the national partners. But for the global scale, we cannot do the same, let's say, approach. Pardon. Then we move to remote sensing. Next slide, please. So for monitoring observatories, we push towards monitoring larger areas where we defined or we develop, let's say, in-house land cover mapping. Using the freely available Earth observation data, we collect data represented for humid zone and for the humid season, and for the dry season, we try to combine them and to do unsupervised classification and to get the main clustering and try to label them and do the refinement with the national partners. This land use mapping had, let's say, allowed us to get the first the first land use land cover map for the OSS action zone, but also towards has helped us to understand the rainfall, let's say, estimation and trends over time, but also the carbon stock over time through the net primary productivity, etc., and also the index to sensitivity, to desertification, which is somehow we call it vulnerability to desertification. From moving from local to national and regional, this implies a lot of, let's say, reflection on how to sustain this approach. And actually, the first land use land cover was developed in 2014-15 for the whole region, and then the second one has been developed in 2019 using GEMS project. And we think about using a kind of semi-automatic classification approach in order to ensure that there's systematic acquisition and production of land use land cover maps that could be used in land degradation reporting according to UNCCD guidelines. Next slide, please. So yes, we do the monitoring, the observatories, but we need also to share this knowledge with different audiences. So the first let's say output was the technical reports for technical people, but also we developed some atlases. We developed some movies for raising awareness on land and water resources, how they're evolving, the importance of ecosystem accounting, etc. And then we train people on the tools that we are developing, on the platforms that we are doing, and how they will be able to do themselves the land cover mapping, etc. And generally, we have a large portfolio that you can discover on the OSS website, on the ecosystem accounting, on the land use land cover mapping, on the different atlases that they are freely available for download and for visualization. Next slide, please. So coming to the GMS and Africa, which is a nice journey that we have undertaken for the North Africa region. The first call for GEMS and Africa, actually, it's global monitoring for environment security. It was actually initially funded by named and funded by the European Union in Europe, and then it moved to Africa through an addition of the name and Africa. So it's GEMS and Africa is an African Union, European Union funded project through the African Union. The first call for tender was published in 2007. We have applied with the consortium of North Africa, composed of 2 regional organizations and 5 national partners in the first phase and 4 national partners in the second phase. So the idea is that we work with the national and regional partners in cohesive approach to develop and sustain some decision support systems for natural resources and for water and natural resource management. The first phase started in 2018 to 2021, where we developed the MISLAND, the first version of MISLAND. And then in the second phase for 2022 to 2025, we are working together with the African Union and some other institutions for extending MISLAND to cover the whole Africa continent. So the spirit of GEMS and Africa is to develop user-driven Earth observation product and services that will be well tailored to the end users' needs, but also to promote regional cooperation and knowledge sharing and building capacity between partners, etc. So the spirit also is to capitalize the existing. We don't reinvent the wheel. We try to identify the gaps and then move to bridging the gaps. Next slide, please. So in GEMS and Africa, mainly it was 3 services in the first phase: 1 for water abstraction surveillance, 1 for agricultural seasonal monitoring, early warning and assessment, and a third one was for land degradation monitoring. So in the second phase, we merged both services for water abstraction and agriculture because they have very linked thematic, let's say, themes. And then we for the land degradation, we decided to go further, let's say, outside our region, which was mainly North Africa region. Next slide, please. So why are we interested in getting land degradation monitoring, whatever? So generally what we do in the past project is that we ask the experts, either from academia, research centers, or for the national mapping centers, to develop maps. They are statics. They spend something like few years to develop one approach, and then it was not systematically updated. So there was a missing, let's say, loop in the system. So we are in the region where we are representing the full range of aridity index. Actually, land degradation is not only land degradation, because it is affecting food security, it is affecting ecosystem services, it is affecting also the biodiversity. So until now, we didn't feel that there's an operational land degradation monitoring geo services. It means for end users who are not expert in remote sensing, they just come and get the information which is already prepared or pre-computed without having the expert of remote sensing experts. So the demand comes mainly from many end users, whether there are decision makers, natural resource managers, and public users. So the thing is that generally the solutions that we were providing, actually they are project driven. So by the end of the project, the solution is gone. We don't sustain our solution, so everything is lost after the end of the project. And unfortunately, technical people, they are not good enough in writing and documenting whatever they are doing. So people who are coming for the second phase, it will be very complicated to get the knowledge that what has been done mainly for the first phase. So because of that, we thought that it's quite relevant to develop something for land degradation monitoring, especially if we have not get the feeling that there's consensus on what is land degradation and how to assess it, especially in our region. If you are talking about facts and figures, we don't have updated, let's say, information timely produced and delivered and approved by each and everyone. So we thought it's more relevant to start from, not from scratch, but start from the past experiences. Next slide, please. So we generally, what we did traditionally, we are remote sensing or IT people, we develop very complicated things, and then we put them on the ground. We are not aware about the end user needs. So GEO Africa is one project that I appreciate really the philosophy behind, because it's centered on the end user's needs. First, we started to collect the information in the North Africa region. So the needs are very, let's say, very known. How much forest area is lost due to forest fires? Where are my vegetation loss and gain hotspots? Where are the hotspots of land degradation, so that I can mobilize funds, or I can build, or I can do something? Are we reaching the land degradation? Where are the regions, the most prioritized region, the most alarming hotspots? How are my forests changing over time? What is the vulnerability? What about the urban extension over agricultural lands? So urban extension is good because we understand that there's a growing population, but what about this extension in the agricultural lands? But without any adequate or timely response. So we try to gather first these needs. We try to see also from Earth observation side what can be done, and we try to match them to provide MISLAND Africa. Next slide, please. So MISLAND Africa is the monitoring integrated services for land degradation. We capitalize the past experience of the partners in Tunisia, in Egypt, in Libya, in Nigeria, in Morocco, and in Mauritania. We have taken into consideration the end user needs and also the North Africa specific context, because vegetation is patchy. Our forest is not forest in, for example, in Tunisia, it's quite different than forest in Germany, which is quite different than forest in Mali. So we have to think about what is the specific context, what are the driving factors of land degradation, but also taking into consideration as starting point the kit of land degradations that have been defined by the UNCCD, which is well explained, well tailored. This is the first starting point. So as guidelines of the UNCCD, they said that this is the kit of minimum indicators, but you can add any additional indicators that you can find relevant or adapted tailored to your specific context. So this is what we try to do. Some of our partners, they were interested more into the vulnerability to desertification because it combines the socioeconomic, vegetation, soil, and climate. Some others, they said, no, we have real problem with forest fires, so we have to focus on that. mainly from the forest department. Some others, they said, no, we have water erosion, we have wind erosion, we have coastal erosion, so we have to take that into account. We have no concrete, let's say, information on the burnt area or the areas affected by forest fire. Carbon emissions, how forests are declining or growing or whatever. So this is mainly, we start from the starting point, which is the kit of indicators of UNCCD, and then we add some additional indicators that our partners, they found relevant according to their needs. And also one of the critical, let's say, aspects is that for the international data sets, they don't describe our areas very well because of the spatial resolution. Vegetation is patchy, so generally we feel that a lot of information is lost due to the spatial resolution. So we push towards the integration of high spatial resolutions data sets, namely Landsat and Sentinel-2. And also, generally, when we develop something, generally we work as technical team, so we don't care about the end users. So it was during the COVID, let's say, pandemic. So what we try to do, as soon as we have a module or a component which is up and running, we push for a training for that. So we try to make regular training, regular exchange with the end users. And as soon as we present something, we give the floor to the end users to collect their feedbacks, either during the training session or after the training session to the surveys, etc. So this is the, let's say, the exciting part of the development process. It was not, let's say, easy, but thanks to the national and regional partners, but also thanks to the end users who were very collaborative. So we try to understand their needs. We try to reflect that into indicators that we integrate into the system. And the second thing is that one of the major problems that we are getting in the project traditional life is that we are more focusing on maps than on services. So what we try to automatize, let's say, to make everything almost automatic in the service, so that the update of the information is very, let's say, almost systematic. And as soon as the end user will choose a region, we choose, let's say, dates of interest. So the system will compute the indicators and will provide a map which can be exported in GIS format, provide statistics which were almost already, let's say, easy to understand, and everything is exportable and for free. So, and let's be honest, also part of the reflection comes also from capitalizing the existing. It means for the Trend Earth spirit, where the complexity of the computation is hidden. You don't expose your users to the equations and the constraints. You just provide them solutions to get access to information. If they agree, okay. If they don't agree, they will provide you some feedbacks. So like we said in French, on rend à César ce qui est à César. It means we have to recognize that part of the reflection has been already done by Trend Earth, and we thank them for that. We try to add our, let's say, add value, which is the integration of high spatial resolution, as well as the other sub indicators. Next slide, please. So the MISLAND architecture, we are working mainly on fully open source architecture. In the front end, we have some libraries like Mapbox and for displaying the maps and the high charts for the charts, etc. And in the backbone, we have Django architecture with Postgres and REST API and Google Earth Engine also API. We focus on the responsive design. It means the MISLAND can be seen on mobile, tablets, computer, etc. And we try to do our best to make it intuitive and interactive and easy to use. It means they don't have to know, the end users who are landing on the page, he doesn't need to know all the complication of NDVR, what is that. So just search the indicator and try to get, and the system will compute and provide for him the map, which can be exported also, but also the graphic chart. Next slide, please. So mainly for the first phase, we addressed two main audiences. The first one was people who are not expert in remote sensing. They said, no, we just want to visualization dashboard, which is easy and interactive. But also some other people, they are experts and they want to play, let's say, with the options behind, etc. So what we try to do is to develop their QGIS plugin in the same way that Trend Earth has developed that, because we found it very relevant. And all the calculation, since we are working on Python environments, all the calculations are done. The scripts are either through web map service, but also through a QGIS script. So you can use your own data, and you can still be able to use the QGIS plugin and export data, etc. But also you can use the web map service. So the three modules, the input, the computation, and the output modules are well explained in the same way that it has been, let's say, deployed in the web service. Next slide, please. So as I said, we started with the kit of indicators relying on international standards. And then we try to also to go to the national standards and policies and strategies, which are the main important, let's say, themes to cover. And we did our best to let's say, to code some processing chains optimized for timely response, but still they are under development and reviewing, etc. So the idea is that to get the indicator or any sub-indicator on the fly. So the user will choose an area or choose upload a shapefile or any GIS format, and he can get information from regional to national to local level. And then he can play with the data, with pre-cached data, but also with the computed data on the fly. Next slide, please. Also, we have to think also the GRC, the Joint Research Commission from the European Commission, because they were really active in MISLAND development, because they reviewed they reviewed the codes, the scripts. They tried to optimize them to gain time and to enrich the interactivity, and also to build up some API into the big data platform, which is a big data analytic platform, which called before GeoDPP. So they were very supportive, and we thank them for the technical and scientific support. Next slide, please. So in the first phase, we worked mainly on North Africa region. We thought that we did good, we did great. And thanks to the private sector who was behind, thanks to the end users, the partners, etc., and the GRC. And then the African Union said, yes, you did great, so why not expanding or upscaling what you have done in North Africa to the whole African continent. So this is the spirit that we will discuss about MISLAND Africa, which is under development. Next slide, please. So in just the idea raised at the end of the first phase, saying that why not providing one unique entry point for land degradation monitoring in Africa? It was a dream, and it has been supported by the African Union. So in the first phase, it was MISLAND was North Africa was successful cooperation between DMS North Africa Consortium, private sector, and GRC. And then in the second phase, we try to push the reflection. So why not joining efforts, all the efforts, African and outside Africa, to extend it over Africa, and also with this will help also to extend the cooperation between the different institutions and different regions, so that we can break the geographic limit between North Africa, East, West Africa, and East and Central Africa. And the expectations that was, and it is dream, and I think that it's underway, but I think that it will be concretized in the next upcoming years, is that the African private sector, academia, expert, and consortia, plus GRC, plus international institutions and organizations, they work together to develop one unique entry point, because we have a lot of geoportals, a lot of estimations. So we have expertise, so just we have to join effort and to work together. We don't care about which name is first, which name is the second, as soon as everybody is there. So that's the spirit behind. So next slide, please.
We have around 5 minutes left, Mustapha.
Okay, so I'll try to rush up. So the first step was in to organize the continental land degradation monitoring for getting high-level endorsement. So African Union Commission was there. Many key users like Indian Ocean Commission, GRC, Agrimets, and the GMS Consortia, and UNCCD and the FAO was there also, plus the AfriGeo initiative. So the thing is that during 5 days, we present our vision and we collect the feedbacks from the different institutions, how they can help academia, private sector, consortia, international organizations, initiatives, etc. So we try to build on that to come up with a roadmap. Next slide, please. Which focus on mainly on different points, which are first one is to build on achievements because there's a lot of experiences, etc. So we have some successful experience spread around Africa and outside Africa. So we want to scale up MISLAND Africa, MISLAND North Africa, but with capitalizing the existing, work in synergy with the other consortia, try to get to encourage and to foster this synergies and participatory approach, setting up joint implementation network, which is a network of experts who are supporting, but also getting kind of external eye on MISLAND Africa. Does it to make sure that it is aligned to scientific, technical, and political institutions and guidelines, and also the regional and national institutions for involvement in projects and validation. Next slide, please. So we thought about one federative entry point, which is MISLAND Africa, composed of different interfaces, various dashboards to adapted to different audiences. So for high-level people, decision makers, they need only some map. We call them mapographics, some maps and statistics about what is going on. For people who want to display a map, maybe it's mainly geoservices. For experts, they need some QGIS plugin, etc. So the idea is that we work all together, but we deliver different dashboards. Next slide, please. The continental, this is the overview of the first, let's say, prototype of MISLAND Africa. We have 9 indicators. We have more than 20 years cover. And we focus also on the difference, let's say, and into make the interfaces more intuitive. Next slide, please. So we are going from the continental let's say from the local approach when we are using the Landsat data or the Sentinel data to assess the indicators up to the continental approach. And then we are relying on different considerations related to the data center. But what we try to develop is a seamless access to information, whether you are at the continental level or regional or national up to the local level. Next slide, please. Also, the added value is that we are developing also some mobile apps. The first prototype has been already shared, and we are working on the refinement of this first app. So the idea is that for people who are not, they don't have a tablet, they don't have laptop, at least we can provide some layers intuitive to interpretation according to different to the different indicators. Next slide, please. So the mapographies, as I said, they are well displayed, let's say, interactive maps, including intuitive illustrations, graph statistics, etc. Decision maker is not expert in remote sensing, so he needs just to get an idea about at the regional or at the continental or at the national level, what is going on and what are the statistics. So this is the spirit of mapographics. Next slide, please. And the network of experts, it has been launched on March 1st in Nairobi last year. I think that we'll share also the subscription to foster, let's say, to enlarge our network. And thanks also to the GEO LDN team, because in the short time they have been able to participate in the first meeting and to present the GEO LDN initiative. Next slide, please. So the first meeting was on June 20th. So we have 34 countries. We have 3 non-African countries, and we have 254 experts already subscribed. Next slide, please. Also, with the prospect, we are working with RCMRD. We have signed an MOU with RCMRD, and we are trying to foster this collaboration between the different regional institutions, because this is what remains. These institutions are there, and they are here and continue to be there. So beside the project lifetime, I think that it's more formal to go to the institutional framework. Next slide, please. Also, we are working on a book which will be the, let's say, it's incoming to get an idea about the overall state of land degradation in Africa, and it's kind of advocacy booklet for decision makers. Next slide, please. So going to the more, let's say, I will call it the most important part, but from EU derived product to real world applications, we tried to get some, at least, sorry if I was too, let's say, I was spending more time in the description of the first part. So next slide,
we'll give
please.
you 5 more minutes, or at least 3 more minutes, Mustapha.
Oh, okay, that's
No
perfect.
worries.
Thank you so much for the generosity. So the first one was one question from a higher instance. They were asking us, where are the land degradation hotspots and bright spots in Africa? So we use the UNCD guidelines, but also we use the Landsat data in order for land productivity assessments, and we provide the first map. And it was not sufficient because our hierarchy want to explain through multi-temporal satellite imagery and national reporting and deep literature review why it is red when it is red. Does it reflect the truth or not? Because as you are aware of, we have also false positives and false negatives. We are working on a policy brief when we try to capture every area and try to explain what is there. The first area, for example, which is the Congo River Basin, we know that the land degradation is coming from mining activities, and it's along the riverbeds, which explain this. And other areas, drought in the Horn of Africa is explaining a lot. In Northern Africa, we have also some different aspects which are quite different than in Eastern Africa and in Southern Africa. So it's not only about providing image, but also providing some proof that things are changing, and this may be we raise awareness about what to do and when to do it. Next slide, please. Second one was a call for in the framework of the global projects support to countries within the framework of improving the reporting system of the United States of the UNCCD. We worked in 2 countries, in Tunisia and in Seychelles. So the idea is that we try to refine to refine the reporting, but also taking into consideration the national data and national specificities, because the focal point was saying that we have a map, but we are not able to interpret or to validate, etc. So the suggestion was to use higher spatial resolution, but also use the national data, and we can go through let's say digitalization of or the identification of the false positives and the false negatives in the country, and then all the key players were let's say were engaged in order to share the data and the information, because they want to refine to get an updated, let's say, version of the degraded land in Tunisia. Next slide, please. So in the Seychelles, the thing is that if we are using the coarse spatial resolution, we are not getting a lot. It has been written by thanks to the UNCCD. It has been suggested that we take into consideration the island's context, because the area is very limited, and we want to produce some products which reflects the real ground truth. So, for example, just one example, if we are seeing in the Seychelles that some areas they are greening, It doesn't mean that forests are getting better, but these are invasive species that need to be taken into consideration. It's a false positive. And in the same time, in some other regions where we have seen that erosion are there, but it's not captured very well by the 300 meters. So we did a field visit with the national team, and we tried to combine the first product derived using Landsat and what we have reported on the ground to combine to refine this reporting. And we are still working with the Ministry of Agriculture and our expert there. Next slide, please.
Mustapha, I hate to interrupt you because the presentation is so interesting, but in order to have some time for discussion with the participants, you would have to wrap up pretty soon.
Okay, so next slide,
Thank
please.
you.
I will go directly to the next slide. Yeah, so the takeaway message was there's a need of cohesive and participatory approach. A lot of people are working on land degradation, so we have to work together. And also, we need to strengthen the cross-fertilization actions between the different projects, programs, and initiatives. And Africa is very complex to address the landscape, to address the land degradation. So we need to refine, fine-tune, etc. And also, there's a lot of experts, but they are working on independent islands. So we have also to think about strengthening the network of experts, and we are open to any kind of collaboration. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so thank you again for your participation. We have lined up a pipeline of interesting upcoming presentations for the coming month. So please stay tuned. We'll have speakers from Digital Earth Africa, from the OGC, from the UNCCD, telling us about how the last reporting cycle went. So please just keep on following us on social media, on Twitter and LinkedIn to find out about the next webinar, which will be sometime in August. Thank you very much and goodbye.